Okay, hello there. I wasn't going to do a video today, but I thought I would just for the hell of it. No notes or anything, I'm just going to do it off the bat, but I'm going to be talking about this one today. It's A Life in Parts by Bryan Cranston. Apologies already, I've got a cold at the moment, so my voice is a bit fucked. Now, anyone that normally listens to my book reviews knows that typically I only really read science fiction, but I read lots of other things. And I think, like a lot of people, I like to read about other people's lives. Not necessarily famous people like Bryan Cranston, but just anyone really that's led interesting or extraordinary lives. I think there's also a fascination with famous people just to find out what makes them tick, what they've experienced in their lives, and what might have made them famous or good at what they do. The other problem with reading something about someone that you admire, especially an actor, is that you don't really know who they are, and you have this idea in your head of who they are and what they might stand for. And there's always a risk that in reading deeper into their lives, you may not like them as much thereafter. This wasn't the case with Bryan Cranston, I must say straight away. I think he's quite a nice chap. I mean, this is what he's written, obviously. And I would say this isn't a ghost-written book. It does seem to have a personality about it. If it is ghost-written, then it's been done very well. The thing that makes me think it isn't is that it's quite a conversational way of writing. And at times it's a little off-putting because it's the way you would talk in a conversation rather than in writing. So certain sentences are slightly misleading, and then I imagine the audiobook would be very good actually. But anyway, this is his life in parts. On the back of it's got Walter White there on the back, or his alter ego, Heisenberg. This is definitely trading on the popularity of the Breaking Bad series, obviously. I mean, that's the thing that's really made Bryan famous in more recent years. I first came across him in what's it called, Malcolm in the Middle. We used to watch that as children. All my younger siblings used to watch it, and I'd watch it as well. And he was brilliant in that. We found him very funny, brilliant actor. And thereafter I remember thinking at the time, well, there's not much else he's going to be able to do after Malcolm in the Middle. It's quite a specific character. Quite a good looking chap, an older gentleman. He wasn't going to be in any action films, I thought, or anything of that nature. How wrong I was. But he was amazing in Breaking Bad, wasn't he? I mean, he loved to hate him and all that. I was rooting for the guy the whole way, even after he poisoned the child. Well, no, that was the tipping point, really. That was a low blow. But anyway, brilliant actor, in my opinion. So the book, as you can imagine, details various episodes throughout his life. And he's led a very interesting life. I'm not going to go into too much detail there. But the thing I found interesting was how he went from being a nobody, really, to being someone that very gradually acquired fame and notoriety for being a very good actor. And it's through perseverance, of course, and honing his craft, and also a fair amount of luck. So this applies to anyone really that's, I think, involved in the creative industries. No matter what you're doing, if you're a writer or like me, I'm trying to be a painter. Well, I had a writer. But you can be as good as you can possibly be, but obviously luck does play a role. But not only that, a kind of doggedness, which is what he kind of had. He also didn't look too far in the future. He was only interested in the immediate, what he could come across and doing them to the best of his ability. There's an interesting story right at the beginning when he first got into doing adverts, and that was his main break really, and it was for an advert for a Mars bar commercial. And he went to the interview and made out that he was, I don't know about a professional rock climber, but that he could abseil down the side of this great big building. He blagged his way into that, but he followed it up by the very next day booking someone to train him how to do it, and then next day did it and absolutely nailed it, and that's how he got into it. So there's a bit of blaggery, but also perseverance and a dogged determination to see it through, and he did. And apparently he did quite a few different adverts. On YouTube there's I saw a video of like 10 minutes of adverts, so that's where he cut his acting teeth, it would seem, in a more professional capacity. Later there were other acting opportunities. Malcolm in the Middle was a very big one. It was a big deal at the time for him. I think it ran to 7 seasons, I think. So that was a nice big chunk of his life there, and a brilliant role. It was really good. It still stands up today. Very well written piece of, I guess it's like a sitcom in a way, aimed predominantly at children, I would say, but there's a lot of adult humour there as well. A quirky character indeed. Hal, I think he was called. In fact, funnily enough, there is a little clip, this kind of like spoofing they did after Breaking Bad, and he wakes up in bed next to his wife from Malcolm in the Middle and says, "I've just had the most horrible dream," that he was Heisenberg. That was a nice little bit. But that thing about how he very slowly acquired fame and the lucky breaks that he had. He also talks about his father, and that his father kind of not ruined their lives, but it gave them a big challenge in the very beginning. I mean, he left his wife and children. He had dreams of being a star in Hollywood, whether it being in acting or writing screenplays, that kind of thing. He was always looking into the future. He always dreamed of being a star. But Bryan Cranston said for him it was always about living in the now and doing the best he could possibly do with what he had there, and thereby slowly building that. Of course, you can always reach a point where you don't go any further. I mean, if he hadn't got the part for Breaking Bad, we wouldn't be talking about this now, I imagine. The other interesting thing was that he's talking about other people that were being cast for Breaking Bad, even though what's he called, Vince Gilligan, was it Vince Gilligan? I think it was him, one of the writers of Breaking Bad, who also wrote for the X-Files. He cast Bryan for an episode in the X-Files, and thereafter always remembered him and thought he'd be perfect for the role. And so Vince wanted him in there from the get-go, but the network wanted it cast, and there were various other actors that were put up for it. I think Christian Slater was one of them, of all people. I can't imagine anyone else playing the role of Walter White. But there we are, that's how things go. Yeah, so he uses his father there also as, he had a very different attitude in life. For him, the goal was being a star. And that's an interesting thing for me as well, or anyone that's trying to make a living. I'm not making a living, but the potential to make a living in a creative capacity is the idea that, what is your goal? I mean, if all you're doing is writing or painting or whatever, you're doing that just to be famous or just to make a lot of money, then you're doing it the wrong way. You have to have a passion for what you're doing, a love for what you're doing, and if you get more out of it, then that's brilliant, but that shouldn't be the end goal. Of course, there's going to be exceptions to that rule. I mean, you could have this I want to be a star kind of thing, and then it happens. I'm sure that happens a lot of times. Similarly, you can absolutely love what you do. You can be brilliant at it, but you never get the lucky break. So anyway, that's just his his ideas on it marry with mine. My God, sorry, I'm struggling to breathe here. The last thing I wanted to talk about was just a scene near the end where he's describing the deaths of his auntie and uncle. Now, they were, I suppose, living as recluses in effect, and they only discovered that they had both died in their home very late on. So they had both been there for days and they'd been decomposing. Terrible, very sad scene. But the bent of that passage wasn't actually the how sad it was, which is what struck me, but rather the fact that he discovered that his auntie and uncle were actually hoarders, and their house was absolutely jam-packed full of crap. I kind of got the idea that Bryan was somewhat kind of repulsed by that, by the idea that this house was just a bit of a mess. It was a total mess, really, and in effect led to the deaths of the auntie and uncle. I think it seems that the uncle fell over, smacked his head, probably died there instantly, and then the wife must have heard him fall and went to his aid with her walker and fell as well and badly broke her hip and obviously couldn't get up, couldn't cry for help, and she probably died a terrible death, a very long one. And so it was kind of, their deaths were caused by their hoarding in some respects. But I have a slightly different take on hoarding in general. And I know it's a kind of a pathological problem that some people have, a mental disorder, whereby they just collect any old crap and fill their house with it. But it seemed that a lot of the things that these people had collected had some kind of personal relationship to them. Again, things that people wouldn't normally collect. So one of the things was like car keys from cars they no longer owned. And I read that and I thought, I used to do that. I'd keep the keys from like places I'd lived or cars I'd driven, just to remind me of that car, a physical thing to say that it was mine and I had that, not just a photograph but a physical entity. And for me, I could have tiptoed into hoarding myself. I've got pretty close in the past. I dealt with it. I mean, I was keeping like doodles that I had done on pieces of paper, loads of the bloody things, and I would I got around that in part by photographing it all. So instead of having reams and reams of paper, I've got files somewhere on my hard drive. I'll probably never see them again, but I know they're there if I want them. Similarly, I've got boxes of other stuff like knickknacks and whatever that have absolutely no use, and I don't look at them for years on end, but I know they're there, and each one contains a memory locked within that object. So if I see it, I'll suddenly remember all of these associations with that object. The object itself has no value, and it is just crap. It's just stuff. But I don't know whether this was the same for the auntie and uncle, but I think their lives, like Bryan Cranston's ones, in opposed to his father, who was always looking into the future, Bryan maybe looks more into the present, maybe not so much into the past in the same way. I mean, I think this auntie and uncle were looking into the past in a way that they wanted all of this around them. They'd kind of made a nest of stuff that reminded them of their lives that didn't necessarily amount to much in the grand scheme of things, like a famous actor like Bryan would be, in terms of monetary value or experience even. But what experiences and memories they had were important to them, and they kind of built it around them as not a shrine as such, but a cocoon, really. I think they were probably embarrassed about it, and they never invited anyone around, but that was their safe place. That was their... I don't know, that was my reading of it. I just wanted to talk about that just because it kind of, it meant something to me. But something very different to Bryan. But anyway, there we are. If you haven't read it, give it a go. Really interesting chap. And I think he would be quite a likable person to meet. Yeah, I would think so. There's plenty of people you wouldn't want to meet, I'm pretty sure. You think you know them, but you don't. Anyway, I'll leave it there. I've been rambling. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Cheerio.